Okay, thanks for joining us today. This is our monthly new partner introduction. So today's webinar is designed to sort of give you a high-level overview of the different sort of products and solutions that Zyxel offers. This is aimed at those of you that are new partners or those of you that have recently joined a partner and are wanting to get a little overview of what we have. I've got over 100 slides to go through in the next hour, so we'll be going through them pretty quick. We're not going really in depth on any particular products really. This is just to give you sort of a general idea of what we've got going. If you do have questions as we go through this today, send them in using the Q&A window in the Zoom interface, and I will answer them probably at the end, but depending on the question, I may be able to answer it as we go through. So we'll start with just a little brief introduction on Zyxel. So Zyxel's been doing this since, I believe, 1989. We've been making computer networking equipment. So we've got over 100 million devices deployed out in the field. Our headquarters is based out of Taiwan. Our US headquarters, though, is based here out of Anaheim, California. So that's our warehouse, sales, marketing, and our tech support. So when you call in, you are dealing with a Zyxel employee. We do not farm it out overseas to a third-party call center or anything like that. So if you're here, you're probably part of our partner program. So just briefly touching this, as a partner, you get access to automatic discounts depending on your partner tier, deal registration, priority access to our tech support, webinars like today's, etc. So our channel products are broken down into a few different categories. We've got security appliances, wireless solutions, switches, access solutions, and network management solutions. So we'll be touching on all of those today. We're going to start off talking a little bit about security. Security products are probably one of our more diverse lines of products, and it often leads to some confusion due to some of the overlap between the different products and model series. So to start off with, we have been certified by ICSA Labs on our firewall and VPN functionality for 20 years straight now. When it comes to our UTM services, rather than doing like most of our competition and take it in-house, we've instead chosen to partner with leaders in the industry. So depending on the product and the package that we're offering, you're getting services provided by McAfee, WebRoot, Lastline, Trend Micro, or Bitdefender. So our security line, some of these features vary depending on which model you're looking at, but some of the main features we offer in our security products include VPN high availability. So you can have two different IP set connections made, and if one of those goes down, everything automatically falls over to the other one. WAN load balancing, giving you the ability to do active-active or active-passive. Multiple WANs. SSL VPN with our extender, so minimal software configuration required for remote users to get access back to the corporate network. L2TP over IPsec for the remote users there. We've got an easy VPN setup to make it easy to set up these VPN connections. On the UTM side of things, we offer antivirus. So this is gateway-based antivirus. Content filtering, including the ability to filter SSL encrypted websites. Application intelligence, the ability to give you reports and create firewall rules based on individual application or function in the application, instead of having to manually figure out port ranges and servers and things like that. A geo enforcer to block traffic based on the geolocation of the IP address. Sandbox and machine learning on our ATP series, botnet and malware blockers, intrusion detection and prevention. Most of our devices also have a built-in Wi-Fi controller, so you don't need a separate wireless LAN controller to manage your Wi-Fi devices, and the ability to offer hotspot functionality, whether that's something like a hotel, a coffee shop, or just guest access for visitors to a corporate network. We have the ability to set up link aggregation groups. We have something called High Availability Pro, which is now included for free, SSL packet inspection, and Radius and Active Directory integration. We also are certified to work with AWS and Microsoft's Azure cloud platforms to be able to create a local private network to the cloud. So this is something that requires a little extra certification, but it allows you to host applications in the cloud and have them accessible locally as if it was on your local network. So we'll start by talking about the VPN and Sd-Wan series products. So this is one of our lineups of security products, the VPN series. So these are primarily focused at providing firewall and VPN functionality. They do not offer UTM services. So you have content filtering though, you do have device high availability, you do have the wireless LAN controller functionality, and you also have the ability to switch it over from VPN functionality to Sd-Wan functionality. So SD-WAN is an alternative to MPLS, basically. It's a software-defined wide area network. And basically, it allows you to create connections between two or more locations over a public internet, but at high reliability and high speed. So since you control both ends, you can do some tricks here. We can violate some parts of the standard internet protocols to give you better performance than you would normally have over a standard VPN connection. So this is usually used as an alternative to MPLS, very common to use if you're trying to do a VoIP-based system across multiple physical locations. So this is an example here of using SD-WAN. What we're trying to do here, there we go, is transfer a 1.9 gig file between two physical locations. Key thing here is we've got a 290 millisecond ping time, 3 milliseconds of jitter, and 0.3% loss. Now, if you were to traditionally send this over regular VPN, it would take almost 3 hours to send because over time it would slow down due to some of the packet loss and jitter and things like that. With SD-WAN optimization, it takes only 10 minutes to send that same file that took almost 3 hours without SD-WAN optimization. The next series we're going to talk about is our NSG series. So this is our Nebula Security Gateway series. So Nebula is our cloud managed networking platform. So basically it allows you to manage all of your customer networks through one simple web interface, nebula.zyxel.com. You log in, your customers are all there. The idea behind the gateway with NSG is to simplify things and make them easier. So you lose a little bit of the functionality that's available in the other security products, but with the ability to easily remotely manage it, streamline interface for setting up VPN and firewall rules, things like that. So the NSG series offers comprehensive management through the cloud. This also works with our Nebula compatible switches or Nebula compatible access points. The ability to auto deploy gateways. Basically, you can configure them in the cloud. You just scan the box, assign it to a customer, and once it gets plugged in, it'll automatically download its configuration through the cloud. It does offer Nebula security services, which is intrusion detection and prevention, content filtering, application patrol. Moving on from there is the USG series. So similar to the VPN series, especially in physical appearance, but specifically focused on providing UTM services. So if you're looking to provide UTM, which is firewall, antivirus, anti-spam, content filtering, IDP, etc., this is the service that you want to look at. If you're not looking to offer those services, the VPN series might be a little bit better for you. So this is where performance is aimed at the UTM side of things. And when we're talking about all these different boxes, we've got multiple solutions available. As a general rule, the main difference between the models is not the feature set as far as the software goes and functionality. It has to do with the physical port configuration on the device and the horsepower, how much throughput it has over the VPN, how much throughput it has through the UTM, how many sessions it can manage, etc. We've also recently launched the Usg Flex Series. So the Usg Flex Series will eventually replace the Usg Series. So again, it's aimed at high performance on UTM here. It's got all the same sort of features here. So from a performance standpoint on the firewall performance, up to 125% increase in performance over the comparable regular USG model. And then on the UTM side of things, up to a 500% performance increase over the USG series equivalent model. So we've done some things here. So if you've already got USGs deployed out in the field, you'd like to upgrade to the Usg Flex. We do have a trade-in program to make that a little bit more affordable for you. We also have a web tool, which you can use to convert the configuration from your USG into a Usg Flex configuration to upload. And if you have existing UTM services that haven't expired, you can transfer those to your new USG Flex. So the way we do that is we basically look at what services you have time left on, and whichever one has the most, we'll basically extend all of your existing services out to that one. And then we'll also still give you the bundled 1 year of services on top of that. So in this case, you would end up with 19 months of services. So here's the mapping here for you. So the USG 40 series will pair up to the USG Flex 100 series. The 60s go up to the 200 series. The USG 110 will move up to the USG Flex 500. USG 210 will move up to also the 500. And then the USG 310 will move up to the USG Flex 700, which isn't available yet today. These regular USG models will probably be available through the end of the year, so there's no rush to migrate or move to the new models if you don't need to. And then the other security series we have is our ATP, Advanced Threat Protection. So ATP is a new way, a sort of different way of handling UTM services on a firewall product. So generally the way UTM services work is you periodically download a set of signatures, you compare those signatures to the traffic that's coming through, and depending on if those signatures match, you then block the traffic. The problem you run into with that is there's a bit of a delay between when a new attack is launched out on the internet and when antivirus companies find it, categorize it, and then update the signatures. So there can be a lag from a few days to a few weeks between when a new threat comes out. So these unknown threats, these new threats that come through, these are called zero-day. So the ATP series is designed to handle those zero-day threats. And basically the way it works is through a cloud-based artificial intelligence. Every ATP we deploy is connected to the cloud. If it detects and sees some sort of traffic, it doesn't know whether it's good or bad. It's never seen it before. It uploads it to the cloud, and then we use artificial intelligence and simulations to figure out what that traffic is and whether it poses a threat. And then we will categorize it and push it out to all of our cloud-connected ATPs. So it doesn't require your particular ATP to see this traffic. Any ATP that sees it first will send it up to the cloud, and then the cloud will distribute what it turns out to be to every ATP that's out in the field. So that's it for security hardware. We do also offer some software on the security side of things to help you when it comes to reporting. So that's our SecuReporter software. And it's designed to give you sort of a clear view of what's going on your network. So it's a combination of taking all the log information that's coming off of your security firewalls, performing analytics on there, and combining it together into a report for you. So it generates reports that let you know what sort of threats have been seen, who on the network was targeted, when it happened, who the attacker was, where did that attack come from. It's designed to manage all of your clients in one place. So you'll have one place you go, you log in, and you're able to see what's going on all of your customers' networks. You have the ability to customize the reports, what information's in there, and then have them automatically emailed either to yourself or to your customer. So you can show your customer, hey, you're paying for these UTM services. Here's what the antivirus is blocked. Here's what content filtering is done for you. And you can brand those reports with your logo. So moving on from there now, we're done with dedicated security. We want to talk a little bit here about Nebula Cloud Management. Now, if you're interested in this and you haven't heard about it too much, we do have a dedicated Nebula webinar where we go into it a little bit more in depth. I think the next one is maybe next week. So you can join that, but we'll provide a quick light overview of this. So basically the idea behind this is to make it simple and easy for you to manage your customers' networks, make it simple and easy for you to install and set up devices, reduce the amount of time you have to spend in the field, and in some cases eliminate the need to go out to a customer location even on new deployments. So all Nebula devices have a QR code both on the hardware itself but also on the outside of the box. To assign a device to your customer, all you do is scan that QR code and assign it to the customer location. So you can have the hardware shipped from distribution to your office, scan it, and then ship it out to the customer site. All configuration is being done in the cloud for you. So you just log into nebula.zyxel.com, you do all your configuration. Most configuration can be done before you even purchase a piece of hardware. So you can work on it anytime you want, place your order of distribution, and start setting up and configuring your customer's network before you even receive the hardware. Once you've got the hardware, you plug it in. Once it powers on and has an internet connection, it reaches out to the cloud, updates its firmware, finds out the configuration that it should have, and automatically downloads and deploys it. Nebula works without having to have anything at your customer location. So there's no virtual machines that need to be set up. There's no cloud keys. There's no CNAs. There's no controllers. Everything just works directly through the cloud and reaches out to the internet, each individual piece by itself. So anywhere you've got your mobile device or an internet connection and web browser, you can keep an eye on your customers' networks. The mobile app provides some basic functionality, some snapshots so you can see what's going on. It's also the tool we use as an installer to scan those QR codes. And if you are on site doing a physical location yourself, you can also take photos of where you're installing the devices so you have reference for later if you have someone else to go on site later on down the road. Guest access is built in. We have captive portal functionality, huge amount of flexibility as far as how you have your users log in. So for instance, you can have somebody log in with a username and password. You can simply have them agree to a terms of service. They can log in with their Facebook. They can create their own username and password. So a lot of flexibility. So you can use this, whether it's just guest access for somebody coming to a corporate office, or whether you're providing more fully functional hotspot access, such as at a public area. So one thing I want to talk about here also is Nebula offers on all of our APs something called Smart Mesh. So Smart Mesh means that basically only some of your APs need to have a physical connection. Any AP that doesn't have a physical connection to your network can create a mesh to an AP that does. So you've always got access that way. It also can be used as a failover. So for some reason, somebody should sever one of your connections, the AP will switch over to mesh mode and find and connect to another AP to maintain that connection for you. On the PoE side of things, Nebula offers intelligent PoE management. We offer all sorts of stuff here, such as VLAN configuration, ACL rules, 802.1x authentication, LoopGuard, DHCP server guard, IGMP snooping, the ability to virtually stack your switches. And all updates are done over the air. There's no reason to have to VPN into your customer's network or set up port forwarding or do a site visit. Configuration changes and firmware updates are all done through the cloud. On the security side of things, we make it super easy to set up multi-site VPNs. Simply select the sites you want to connect together, choose the topology, whether it's star, hub, and spoke, and then basically hit apply, and we take care of setting up everything else. So Nebula is free. All the core functionality of Nebula is free. There is no limit to the number of devices or the number of customers you can manage in the free version of Nebula. When you're looking at equipment, you'll see stuff advertised as Nebula Flex. So if it's advertised as Nebula Flex, that tells you that you can use it in traditional standalone mode, or you can manage it in the cloud. And it's really easy to switch between the two. So you can try it out. And if you don't like Nebula, you can always switch back to standalone mode. You are not locked in. Nebula Flex Pro tells you that when you're setting up your device, you also get 1 year of Nebula Pro Pack. And we'll talk what Nebula Pro Pack is here a little bit in the future. It unlocks some additional functionality in the Nebula cloud. And if we're talking about wireless devices, it also means you've now got 3 modes for controlling your device: standalone, Nebula, or using a controller, either a dedicated controller or the controller that's built in on most of our security appliances. So on the paid side of things, we offer 2 different sets of licenses: Professional Pack and Security Pack. So Professional Pack, what it's doing for you is it's unlocking some new features, particularly aimed at MSPs and those of you wanting to provide more proactive management of your customers' networks. So it gives you a lot more reports, push notifications if devices go offline, more admin accounts that you can set up and associate to your different customers, and some other stuff like that. We go into it a little bit more in depth on the dedicated Nebula webinar. And then there is the Nebula security solution. So these are the UTM services offered by our NSG security gateways. So these are sold as an annual license. You get 1 year out of the box when you buy an NSG, so you would only buy this after that first year expires. So a quick summary, Nebula is free, works with switches, access points, and our NSG gateways. Most of the core functionality and configuration things are free and included with this free bundle here. Going up to a professional pack, it can be purchased as either an annual license or as a one-time perpetual license, which is sort of treated like a site license. You buy a certain number of APs, a certain number of switches, and you can switch out the hardware at any point. It's not tied to individual pieces of hardware. And it unlocks extra stuff here like a year's worth of cloud logs, automatic topology views, extra admin accounts, the ability to clone existing sites, the ability to use templates to change things across multiple sites. And then there's the security pack offered as an annual license. So on the gateway side of things, it's just our NSG series. And again, the main difference between these different models is simply the configuration of the ports and the throughput of the individual device. On the switch side of things, we have the dedicated NSW switches. So these are designed and can only be used in Nebula. And the rest of the products listed on here are either Nebula Flex or Nebula Flex Pro. So that's our GS1920 V2 series. Those can all be Nebula managed. The XGS 1930 series can be Nebula managed. The XS 1930s can be Nebula managed. The GS 2220s, the XS 3800, and now the GS 1350s. So all of these, you have the flexibility of managing them in Nebula or using them as a regular standalone switch. And on the access point side of things, basically, like all but 2 old models that we've got currently all support Nebula as either Nebula Flex or Nebula Flex Pro. Which leads us to just in general wireless. I'm not going to go through all the different models, but I will talk about some of the tech. So one thing you'll see is some of our models offer something called dual optimized antennas. So your traditional AP is designed to be mounted on the ceiling in a central location. Unfortunately, you don't always have the ability to mount the AP in the center of the room on the ceiling. You oftentimes have to mount it onto a wall for whatever reason. So the problem you run into when you mount a ceiling mount AP on the wall is the pattern of coverage is optimized for that ceiling mount. So it ends up shooting the signal up into the ceiling and down into the floor. So you're wasting a lot of your signal. You're not getting the external coverage you want. And if you're in a multi-story building, you're probably causing interference to the floors above and below you. So the dual optimized antenna basically is these APs have 2 different sets of antennas, one for your traditional ceiling mount and another antenna that's set to be for wall mount. And you can switch between those antennas based on where you've installed the access point. So you're always getting the optimal antenna pattern for where the access point has been installed. The other technology we offer is something called smart antenna. If you've sold Ruckus or familiar with Ruckus, you're probably familiar with that. It's very similar technology to theirs. Key thing here, just because there's some point of confusion, smart antenna is not beamforming. These are 2 different things. Sometimes people get those 2 confused. So the main point of smart antenna, at least from our standpoint, is having to deal with code channel interference. So with Wi-Fi, you've got a very limited spectrum of RF that you can use that has to be shared amongst all of your access points, plus any other sort of wireless device operating in the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz spectrum. The way radio frequencies work is basically only one device can be transmitting at a time. If you have multiple devices transmitting at a time, you cause interference, packets get dropped, performance is really bad. And it's not just wireless devices. A lot of industrial equipment puts out interference. I know in my house, I can watch my signal meter go down due to signal to noise ratio anytime my air conditioner kicks on because it's putting out some interference in the 5 gigahertz spectrum. So anyway, smart antenna is primarily aimed at dealing with that, but it also helps you increase capacity, both the number of users that can be on an access point, but also the density of access points in an area, reduces interference, increases the coverage. So we'll sort of show you how that works. So again, a traditional access point is designed to be mounted on the ceiling, and it has sort of a round antenna coverage pattern. You'll also, on outdoor point-to-point links, you'll see these directional antennas where they focus the beam in one area. So here's your traditional indoor business type access point. You introduce a source of noise. In this case, we're using a microwave, but it could be another access point mounted over here. It could be your neighbor's access point. Who knows what it is. And basically, that will cause interference, and that degrades the performance of your network. So with smart antenna, instead of having this one fixed antenna pattern or having two different antenna patterns like our dual optimized access points, we have the ability to go through literally hundreds of different antenna patterns for the coverage. So we have a little algorithm that goes through those antenna patterns, takes a look at where a client device is in relationship to the access point, but also where other sources of RF interference may be coming from. And it chooses an antenna pattern that optimizes the signal towards the client while ignoring any sort of interference that may be coming out there. So because of this, we reduce interference, we increase the speed by increasing the signal to noise ratio. It works really well, and it works even with mobile devices. So as someone moves around, we change the antenna pattern. Not like some of the other technologies that don't really work too well when you've got somebody moving a device around. So a few years back, a third-party group here, this is the University of Brescia in Italy. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. These saw the claims us and Ruckus and others are making, and they decided to do some tests to see if smart antenna really makes a difference out in the real world. So you can see the link down here. This will take you to their entire white paper where they tested the bunch of stuff. The models tested were our WAC 6503D-S, an Aruba, which does not have smart antenna, a Cisco AP, which does not have smart antenna, and a Ruckus, which does have smart antenna. The results of their testing was in a real world environment where there is co-channel interference. Smart antenna makes a huge difference in performance. And we did outperform the other smart antenna solution that they tested as well. I want to talk really quick here about the construction of our access points. It doesn't matter if you're buying our $89 NWA 1123 ACV2 or if you're buying our $650 WAC 650S. All of our access points have the same basic construction philosophy. So one thing you will notice if you pick up one of our APs and you pick up one of our competitors, doesn't matter if it's Ubiquiti, doesn't matter if it's Ruckus, you will feel our access point weighs a lot more. So why is that? First thing we've got going on is we have a heat shield or heat sink built into the back of the housing on all of our devices and a ton of flow. And that's because on these solid state devices, one of the #1 causes of failure is heat fatigue over time. So this helps pull the heat off the board, off the chips, and vent it out the top of the product. Some of our competition doesn't even have vent holes in their access points. So over time, that causes them to fail much more quickly. We also only use solid state capacitors, so there's no worry about an electrolyte capacitor failing on the board and causing damage. You will also, if you open up our devices, see that we use a lot more shielding on the board than our competitors do. Normally on our competitors, you will just see 2 little bits of shielding, specifically around the Wi-Fi chips. We shield a lot more than that just to help with EMI. The other thing we do differently is we do not mount our antennas directly onto the PCBA, which almost all of our competition does. Instead, we have them moved here to another little metal platform that's above the PCBA. It helps shield the antennas from EMI coming off the board. And it also helps act as a reflector from signal coming in to help sort of focus it on the antennas themselves. So to combine that all together, you get longer life. All of our business APs have a lifetime warranty because we don't have capacitors that'll fail, and we help keep the heat off the board to help prevent heat fatigue. And you'll get a little bit better signal to noise ratio because of the shielding and moving the antennas off the PCBA. Won't make a lot of difference where you've got good strong signal. It makes a huge amount of difference for those edge cases, you know, where you're on the edge of the coverage area. It's the difference between no connection or a connection that's frustratingly hard and a connection that's slow but reliable. We have launched Wi-Fi 6. We've done a couple different webinars where we go more in depth as to what Wi-Fi 6 offers, why you'd be interested in it. But we've got 5 access points in our Wi-Fi 6 range. 3 of those are available today. The other 2 will be available hopefully by the end of August. So we've got everything here from a little $200 access point all the way up to our $650 beast here, which has 3 radios in it, built-in Bluetooth, 5 gig 5 gig LAN connection, and requires 802.3 BT for the performance. So now we'll talk a little bit about switches. So we've got a lot of switches out there. So when you're looking at the price list or pulling us up at distribution, by looking at the model number, it gives you a pretty good idea of what's going on with the switch. So all of our switches will start with a prefix. So if it starts with ES, it tells you all of the ports are 100 megabit ports. If it starts with GS, all of the ports are gigabit. If it is XS, it tells you all of the ports are 10 gig ports. If it's XGS, it tells you that all of the regular ports are 1 gig, but there are also 10 gig uplink ports. And MGS tells you it's a metro area switch designed to be used at like a core switch. If it ends with P or HP, it's telling you it supports PoE. If it ends with F, it tells you all of the ports are fiber ports. So we offer something here called combo ports. So basically it's shared ports here for the uplink. So these 2 ports are basically 1 port. So you've got the flexibility of using copper or using an SFP for fiber. So in this case, there's 4 physical ports, 2 Ethernet, 2 SFP, and basically that turns into 2 ports. Right, so this is 1 port, your choice of either copper or fiber, and this is another port, your choice of copper or fiber. So you will see some of our switches support SFP, some support SFP+. Basically, anything faster than a gigabit is generally going to be an SFP+ type SFP. We sell our own SFPs, and we work with most other third-party SFPs that are out there. Many of our switches offer switch stacking with dedicated DAC connections here to physically stack the switches together. With Nebula and through other software, you do also have the ability to virtually stack your switches for easy configuration. Most of our switches today are PoE+, so that those support up to 30 watts of power, also known as 802.3 AT. And we've started introducing new switches that support PoE++, which provides power up to 60 watts per port, also known as 802.3 BT. So on the PoE side of things, we've got a huge flexibility as far as PoE power budgets. We've got switches with just 60 watts budgets. We've got switches that go up to 1 kilowatt of power on them. So we have the ability to do what's called intelligent PoE management. Basically, instead of using the allocated power, which follows the 802.3 PoE standard, we can monitor what's going on and allocate power based on the actual real world usage. We have the ability to control PoE on a port basis and the ability to set up PoE scheduling. So to try to explain this here, the standard way PoE works is basically a device fits into one of 6 classifications, and that classification tells the switch how much power it needs. Unfortunately, these classifications have some real big gaps in them. So you can see here, class 3 is 15.4 watts. Class 4, I believe, is 30 watts. So it's a big jump. So this is showing here, you know, on a traditional switch with classification mode, it's going to reserve 15.4 watts for each connected device. If you use our consumption mode, that intelligent PoE monitoring, we can see these devices only require 9 watts and will only reserve 9 watts of power per device, freeing up, you know, 6 watts of power extra into your budget so you can fit more devices on the same switch with the same budget. Same sort of thing here on IP cameras. You know, the camera may be a class 4 device requiring 30 watts of power per the PoE standard, but in reality, it only needs 16 watts of power. So you can almost double the number of devices in this sort of scenario. So when we're looking at our switches, the next thing we will talk about is the series. So our 1000 series here, these are Soho unmanaged switches. The 1100 series are unmanaged switches of various different configurations. 1200 series are our Soho web managed series, so the very basic simplified interface. XGS are our Soho 10 gig switches. Going up from there for our more business class stuff is everything 1900 and higher. So 1900 series is our smart managed switches. Our 1920 series switches have basically the full functionality of our layer 2 switches, but with no command line interface. We have the 1930 series here. So these are Nebula Flex compatible, just like the 1920 V2. These are all 10 gig series. So GS 1920 V2s, 1 gig switches. XGS 1930s, these have 10 gig uplink ports on them. Oops, there we go. We have our NSW series switches. So those only work with Nebula. These are all gigabit ports. 2210 series. These are our traditional layer 2 managed switches. So they do have a web interface. They also offer a CLI and full SNMP. We've also just started launching now the 2220s, which will eventually replace the 2210s. Very similar to the 2210s. We've upgraded the hardware a little bit, and we've added the ability to do Nebula management. And then on the high-end side of things here, these are our layer 3 switches, the 3700, the 3800, and the 4600 series. We also have another weird series of switches here, which is our 1300. These are switches that were designed specifically to deal with some issues in IP surveillance, IP cameras. So one of the things these switches can do is we can do data connection and PoE up to 250 meters using standard cable and standard devices on the other end. So this will work with any sort of PoE device. The trade-off is we're lowering speed to 10 megabits per second. The 1350 are our web managed versions of these switches. These also work with Nebula. So some of the other features, in addition to the 250 meter Ethernet range instead of the standard 100, is the ability to provide continuous PoE power. So even if the switch needs to reboot or a configuration change needs to be applied, we will keep PoE power to the connected devices, so those devices don't have to reboot themselves. We've got a screen built into the GUI which shows you the status of connected devices. We have the ability to either use ping or use LLDP to monitor the status of a connected device. And if it freezes up and stops functioning, we have the ability to automatically power cycle that device to reboot it and get it back online. We've got a number of settings there to tell it, how often to check, how many failures before you reboot it, how long to wait once you've rebooted it before you resume that process. And that, guys, concludes today's webinar. I hope you found it somewhat interesting. I know we went through a lot in a short amount of time. We do have much more in-depth presentations on a lot of these different things. I personally put on a Wi-Fi 101 webinar, more in-depth Nebula webinar, more in-depth Wi-Fi 6 webinars. We're also open for suggestions. I know Tribe provides webinars on switches and stuff. Marcus provides some more tech-oriented webinars. So if you're interested in those, you can join us. If there's something you'd like out of us, reach out to me. My email is seanr@zyxel.com. We're always looking for your suggestions and the topics you'd like to see us cover. Obviously, we want this to be valuable for you. So let us know what we can do to make these presentations more valuable. Alternately, let us know other topics that we're not covering that you'd like to see us cover. And we can maybe put those together for you. If you have any questions, send them in via the Q&A box. So far, I don't have any questions. You can always reach out to me offline. And thanks, guys, for joining us today. It doesn't look like any questions are coming in, so I'm just going to go ahead and end today's webinar. If you are typing something up, just email it to me. Again, my email, it's up on there on the screen, but it's just ShawnR, ShawnR @Zyxel.com. Thanks, guys.